Okay, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Welcome to the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting Podcast. We're here with a very special guest.
Yes, a very special guest. And I guess I'll do the intro because I have entrusted this gentleman to my children's education for the last 8-ish years.
It's personal.
And going on. But that's not really why you're here, Rabbi Alter. Rabbi Daniel Alter of the Moriah School is here today to talk about a very specific topic. And because you've been writing and thinking on this topic for quite a long time, and we invited you here because we want to know more about it, and we want to talk about smartphones, which is the topic of our conversation today, and what you've been thinking and doing about this topic over the last couple of weeks. And
it's also a cover article of our Back to School edition. We're actually amazed that you're here today. Back to School has a busy head of school that you're here, so we even more appreciate you being here because I can only imagine what it's like in the school building right now as well.
I turned my phone off. We're good. They can't reach me.
You turned your phone off.
They can't reach me.
Oh, we didn't ban smartphones from heads of school either?
Right.
Oh,
I banned smartphones from the table, from my own table.
All right. So so the truth is, actually, I wish we would have had the paper in front of us because it's a cover article. Rabbi Alter and you and I know each other for a really, really long time, 30 years, I think, roughly. It could be roughly. So we've actually, the smartphone issue, we've known each other probably for about 6 or 7 we've been talking about. And the truth is, really, the first question is a why. I hope it's not too broad. Why did you write this now? Okay, what led you to do it today and now, 2025, September 2025?
Right, so great question. So I would take us back a little bit, right? So smartphones become prominent 2010, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Relatively quickly, many of us began to realize there was something changing, there were problems. Over time, it's become more and more of a concern for parents and people in the community. About a year and a half ago, there was a book, Dr. Jonathan Haidt, who is a professor at NYU, wrote a book called The Anxious Generation, and actually engaged pretty heavily with the Jewish community at the time, and addressed the issue, right? And the issue is one which I don't know that I have anything to add. We're all aware of tremendous amount of literature over what the issue is with smartphones. Just to give you one example, about a month ago, there was a community meeting in Bergen County that involved heads of schools from elementary schools, high schools, and RCBC, the rabbis. And as we were discussing about how we can work together, generally, Bergen County, all 3 of those groups work very well together. And we were just discussing how can we take it to the next level and work really well together. And in that context, we made a list of all the challenges in the community. And you can imagine there's all types of things like, should we deal with, higher levels of anxiety? Should we deal with gambling issues? Is alcohol an issue? Is pornography an issue? And almost every one of those issues connects in some ways to this issue of recreational technology, which has exacerbated a lot of these things. So it's a huge issue. There's definitely a lot of awareness. And you're seeing a real trend now where people are beginning to talk about addressing this issue, right? So what's the language? If you've read about this, you'll hear 2 words that are used very commonly: collective action, right? Because it's very hard. I joke in the article. I think that I always say 60% of kids in any class the kid will say to their parents, "I'm the last one to not have a smartphone." Right? We know that's not true, right. But that feeling is really, really strong. Right? So we need collective action. We need to get everyone together and figure out together we are going to place limits. We can talk about what those limits are. But there's virtually nothing written on a roadmap. How do you achieve that collective action? What do you do? What's the first step? What's the second step? And it's really shocking to me that virtually nobody is writing about this.
Right. And so then to just place the article in time and place, your article addresses sort of the early years of a child's smartphone experience, sort of starting in the 4th grade level, but also at the same time, placing your piece in the space we're in now. The high schools this year, September 2025, New York City Public Schools have banned smartphones in school from bell to bell. So meaning the yonder pouches you had in our school 5 years ago, Right. New York City is following along. right? And now all six or more of the Bergen County high schools have agreed together, collective action. There will be no smartphones in high school in Bergen County Jewish yeshiva high schools this year. And that, this was something I was talking about with Moshe earlier, in order for this not to be a shock for incoming ninth graders in, say, 3 to 5 years, like it is this year, what are we doing now, I guess? Is that's part of what we're talking about, right? Like I have a child who is like, why is this happening to me? Like, where is my smartphone going to be for 8 hours? Like,
Right.
And this is real. So, but we would like to move to a time when this is not a shock going into ninth grade.
Right. So I would say all of the above, right? This is a much larger program than just one initiative. I'm focused on one of the initiatives which I think is really critical, maybe one of the most important, and that is not giving our kids access to recreational technology like smartphones till a later date, and social media, put those two together. But the high school, that's, I think, also critically important, right? That's another piece of it. The goal really, in my mind, I saw a sign in a store about 2 weeks ago. It was a great sign that it had a line that said, unplugged is the new luxury. I just thought that was a great sign, right? But that's the goal. The goal is to try to address what we know, the list of challenges with recreational technology. There's no one solution. My hope is the article I wrote, in the next year you will see 100 people writing articles on all types of initiatives that are similar, and build and are better than mine even.
Right. And so some of the schools have adopted some of these collective action type initiatives. I know Yeshivat Hatid did. We had an article about it last spring, I think.
Right.
We had an article on the high schools also.
The high schools also. But the collective action idea was sort of at the grassroots level, and you described it in your article extensively about talking to parent groups at first, identifying groups of parents in a particular grade. What grades are those, I guess? And can you talk more about the collective action goal?
Sure.
Wait, so before you answer, I have to just embarrass you a little bit.
Right.
I know you're here as the head of school, Mariah, but the truth is, I happen to know that you're also part of a unique group of heads of school. Okay, the heads of school of Bergen County are a really unique group. That you guys, they've been working together.
Yeah,
and I
very
actually.
strongly.
These guys are all friends. They've also been a stable group. It's been mostly the same for the last decade. They actually work on different things together. They mostly like each other, and they really. I'm just saying, like I actually talk about collective action. You're talking within your school. At least the article talked about what you did in Mariah, but I actually think to me the strength of it is the fact that there is a group of like-minded heads of school that actually get stuff done, okay? It may be unique to elementary, middle school. So
so for sure, and I would add to that two things. Number one is when we talk about collective action, we live in a global world, right? So I can in my school get to a very high percentage of kids, let's say, who have no smartphone, but they're still interacting with their camp friends, their neighborhood friends. The more we as a collective are successful, the better. That's number one. Number two is, I've actually interacted with Dr. Haidt a number of times where we've talked about the Jewish community. The Jewish community, in his mind, for a lot of reasons, is actually at the forefront in some ways of this discussion, right? So what's happening in Bergen County is great. There are a number of schools trying different initiatives. It's happening in other places in the country as well. And we are so interconnected, right? So that actually is very positive, right? We have a number of advantages. Number one is we have... we generally tend to have like a very well-educated parent body who understand the issues and care deeply about, their children. Shabbat has been a great head start, right? 25 hours a week where kids don't have access.
Right.
And it's interesting, by the way, that, many communities are challenged with this, right? The gateway drug to violation of Shabbat often is smartphones, right? So that's very interesting also. So in many ways, the collective action piece starts in a school maybe, but the more we can sort of expand this, the better. And the fact that a number of Bergen County schools are doing this at the same time is even better for us.
And what age or what grade are the focuses on the parent groupings, at least in your experience?
Right, so when we started, actually, we said to our middle school parents, I'm sorry, but like you guys are done. Too late.
I know, that
Finished,
I was in that group.
Like,
they were like, you're
too
over.
many of you have smartphones.
You just gave up on the middle
We gave
school.
up on it from the beginning. Yeah, we said, sorry, but like too late on you. We started with our 5th grade.
I think I sent you an email about it. I'm like, my 6th graders are done?
Yeah.
Chopped liver.
Right. Sorry, fried brains, nothing we can do about it. It is what it is. So we started with 5th grade. What was interesting was we developed this approach over the course of time. We started with the 5th grade, then we went to a 3rd grade, then we went to a 4th grade, and we just, once we had the playbook, we just did it every single time, and we just refined it. So what's not in the article, but at the end of the article I say, you can reach out to me, we did a Zoom session. It was the same Zoom session which we refined over and over again, and we're happy to share that Zoom session, the transcript of the entire Zoom session, because what we have found is there are a number of prominent questions that parents will ask. And after a while, you have the whole list of questions, right? The first time around, they asked some good questions, and we said, oh my gosh, we didn't think about this. But at this point, we don't get questions that we haven't thought about anymore. It's not that complicated, right? But why should everyone have to start from scratch? Right. So if we can share that with other schools and make it so much easier for them, that's great. I also find when I watch other initiatives, I see like mistakes that are being made. Again, this is my perspective in terms of mistakes. I'll give just a few examples, right? One is the one that we tried. Some schools are really gung-ho about this, and each grade does their own thing. And when I take a step back and think about creating culture, it's really hard to create culture where you need to create a new culture in every single grade, right? The idea is great, but I just don't think it's going to work. That's what we felt strongly. We needed to create we need to choose a path and stick with it, and this is our path, right? Other schools may choose slightly different paths. That was one piece. Another mistake I saw was sometimes the schools are a little bit too sort of top down. I'll give you a few examples of that. So we actually, one of the things we were working on was we were trying to find what people are terming a healthy phone, right? Which is
kosher phone.
Right. Actually, healthy phone is even a much better term for it, right? Because healthy just speaks to what we're trying to achieve in a much better way than kosher phone or flip phone or any of those topics.
Meaning the apps
it's not my term.
Means the apps that one has on their phone is only related to communication for calling and texting?
Right, basically.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
It's another way of saying kosher or flip phone, and this is not my idea. This term came up in that meeting I described before. So in trying to find a healthy phone, there's all types of things out there, and we said one of the many things we need to do is we need to create sort of one or two options so that kids say, oh, this is the phone that we get, it becomes the norm, it's the culturally accepted. And we saw one other school that had done this, and the school basically, someone on our committee copied their language, right? Which is great, we should all be copying from each other. And the language, I thought was really not what we wanted to achieve. The language basically was something along the lines of these are these school-approved phones, right? And I think that's a big mistake, right? In order for this to work, I think I say in the article, it has to be a school community issue, not a school issue, right? The example I give is my sisters went to Beis Yaakov, and in the interview process in the Beis Yaakov, there was, the question always asked was, do you have a TV at home? Now, the vast majority of the kids did have a TV at home, right? This was a few decades ago, and everybody lied, right? So what does that help, right? If everyone's not being honest, it has to come from the parents, and we need to think about how we actually change the culture so parents, or at least most of the parents, are on board. It doesn't have to be everybody. I'm totally fine with being a little manipulative and putting, I'll give you another example, a very similar example. There are some schools I saw that they created this pledge, and they get people to sign up for the pledge, right? But then they don't tell anyone who's pledging. I think that's a huge mistake, right? Why? Because we're using the power of community, right? Power of community is very strong. If you create a pledge, when people pledge, why do people pledge money and then put a plaque on the wall, right? So the hope is that people see that person's name and say, oh, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it too. Right? So the idea of, and now, will some people be embarrassed, I'm not signing the pledge, or you're outing me? Maybe, but my feeling is when you look at the balance in terms of what we're achieving and trying to do everything we can to achieve it, on the other side you look at sort of what we're giving up, people have the free choice. They can decide whether they want to sign the pledge or not. I think that was also a huge mistake. Which
You also
inhibited.
said that the word pledge was horrifying.
Yes, we don't use the word pledge.
But also,
I found fascinating about that.
what age is this pledge? It's 4th grade, and it's to wait until 8th.
Yeah, so we decided for our community that
Okay.
we were going to aim for no smartphones until beginning of 8th grade and no social media until the end of 8th grade. Right, that was sort of where we. That's sort of
does
where we
social
figured.
media include WhatsApp or not?
It does not.
Okay, just
It
checking.
does not.
Because it is, just so you know.
Yeah.
As you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you about that. Do we? Because I often feel the Orthodox community, we have to the right of us the more yeshivish.
Right.
You mentioned Beis Yaakov. For them, phones are really not an issue. Meaning, like they just don't have them.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
and the community as a culture, with their exceptions, of course, but they're really not giving they're giving their
Right.
kids phones
Right.
much later. They're only doing kosher phones. The girls, let's say, are getting the phones in deep into high school, or when they go to seminary. Like, meaning there's
Right.
definitely a different. My nephews, for example, I can't even text them, okay,
Right.
until they get married, okay, or something like
Right.
that. So
They for sure have solved it, right? And that's for their community. Like, that's not an issue that they have. Although they've solved it for their children, they haven't solved it for their adults.
Right.
The example is, if you go into a Haredi neighborhood in Israel with a smartphone, and you know how when you go on like the Wi-Fi and you see like
Who's
the
around?
networks that pop up
Everywhere.
If you go to any Haredi neighborhood and you walk in the hall of an apartment building, you will see that virtually every home in most neighborhoods has Wi-Fi access.
of course.
But for sure, I mean, and we should learn from everybody. We can learn from the Haredi community in similar ways. I'm sure there are things we can learn, right? So this approach really was sort of for a non-Haredi community where we saw in our communities people were getting phones earlier and earlier. It was pretty common in 3rd, 4th grade that people were trying to get phones. So that was sort of when we said, like, we need to figure out how to sort of push back on this and get the community behind this. That was really very much the thinking.
And the goal is the earlier that a child does not have access to this technology, the benefits to growing up without have sort of brain development without this dopamine sort of potential addiction, things like that, has less of an ability to take hold, maybe? Or
So I would say that's for sure a plus. I'll be totally honest, that wasn't necessarily why we decided where to start with grades. We just said we need to start with grades where there are no smartphones yet, because once there are, it's really difficult for parents to take it away. Right. That was really the thinking.
But I did want to ask, I wanted to throw in another question just to
Right.
give it additional oomph, so to speak. Can we talk about the levels of anxiety, stress, depression in these younger grades and getting younger, sort of, as we have seen sort of the advent of smartphones sort of take over communication, sort of less socializing in person, less IRL activities, chat groups for grades, for example. How can we talk about that in a healthy way so that kids might be able to understand that? Is there a way?
Yeah, so for sure, I honestly don't think I bring anything new to the table on that topic, because I feel like there's so many resources out there. Like I said, everyone should read The Anxious Generation. The Tikva Fund has done fabulous work in this area, really sort of bringing these issues to the forefront. I'm on a weekly email from Screenagers. There's a movie, Screenagers, came out many years ago, so they still send me emails every week. There's so much information out there about the things that are happening and taking place. I do think this is a relatively common conversation. My sense is that many schools have people coming in regularly to talk to the kids. I went on sort of, because of the high school initiative, and I have high school age kids, I went on sort of just a sort of a hobby/mission. And every time, my incoming 11th grade daughter was just probably as annoyed by it by now. Every time I see a bunch of kids, often they're her friends who are like, are over, I have like a list of questions I ask them. Just for like information purposes, right? And like, and
That's not annoying at
formal
all.
list?
yeah, and the truth is, they know, right? I was in camp this summer. I went to Camp Dina for Shabbat, and I spoke to all the 8th and 9th grade girls about this topic. And they all know. They're a lot. Kids are a lot smarter than we think, and they understand the issue. So when you first ask them, "Oh my gosh, it would be horrible if you took my smartphone away," but when they start delving into it and say, "Wait, like actually, camp is really cool without smartphones," and if all my friends didn't have it, so I didn't feel the pressure, I wouldn't mind. You hear that from kids a lot. I
Right.
mean, younger elementary maybe not, because I don't know if they're able to really have some of them are not able to have that conversation, but even by middle school, our kids get it. They understand.
Also, an unscripted commercial for the Jewish Link is during the summer, Rabbi Larry Rothwax wrote a great piece in our paper, and we liked it so much we put it in as our guest editorial about the magic of camp because of people not staring at their screens. And it really does give that idea of engagement with the world around you being more colorful, more powerful, more social with just the screen just isn't there because nobody has them. It makes a difference. So I would ask people to go back and read that if you've been away.
Yep, and that's the second, right? That he wrote an article years ago in the Jewish Link, and then this was the second piece, just to reiterate that he sees it more true than ever.
Yeah. So it's proof that nothing bad happens when your phone isn't with you. Right. From a 15-year-old
So it's not just Shabbat. It's not just Shabbos. It's also the camp. You have those 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever you're going to.
Yeah. So I really think that at the end of the day, if somebody is not concerned about the smartphone issues, then they just need to read more. I feel like there's so much data out there at this point.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, by the way, as a head of school? Has there been specific? Have you been confronted directly with these kind of issues, with a kid being, taken over by a smartphone, evidence, meaning you've seen it.
So for sure, I mean it's hard to know because even if we have hundreds of kids in our school, it's still anecdotal on a certain level. But there's no question that I'll give you one example, an obvious one: kids don't read anymore. The vast majority of kids are not reading. Right? We're spending a lot of time thinking about writing and language arts. And a kid who doesn't read is never going to be a good writer.
Correct.
Right? So that's just one example where it's an obvious one, but it has a real impact.
Wow.
We should just give up, by the way, if the kids aren't reading. I'm often asked, why don't I start a paper? When do we start a paper in Israel? And I ask all our friends, and I ask, do your kids read? My friends who made Aliyah, do your kids read anything in English? Right. And they said no, they're not reading much, and if they're reading, they're not doing much in English. And I said, I'm not going to Israel if the next generation is not reading English. So
okay, I just have to pull the knife out of my heart at this moment. That's really scary. That's something I actually am not sure I put together because I do have kids who are readers. But you're right, it's a very urgent reading issue, and it's usually Friday afternoon. I don't have enough for Shabbos. So they're Shabbos readers, but you're right. It becomes urgent on Erev Shabbos.
Yeah. And there are exceptions, right? Whatever. Your children do read a lot. But
yes.
The vast majority of kids are not reading compared to 20 years ago.
Got to do some more incentive programs.
We do have. I mean, the other thing that I also wanted to maybe throw in if we had time is the idea that, how there's always the next big crisis. At first it was radios are evil, and then televisions are evil. And then
web.
If we get a color television, it's even more evil. And the internet. And remember there was even the Misor, the whole rabbinic Misoris, some massive organization got together. The MetLife Stadium.
The Asifa against the internet.
They're the internet. And it just didn't ever... whatever it wasn't the internet that was the problem. It was how we use it.
Right.
Obviously, you need your Chase mobile app sometimes, or whatever. Phones do have good and healthy usages, and you do need to say, Mom, can you pick me up at 4:15, not 5:15, or whatever it is. These are. So the question, I guess, is, this is maybe our generation's concern, and we are the caretakers of the generation for whom we have to sort of change our treatment of it. But is it really so anxious? Is it really such an emergency?
Right.
Or is this going to be something that will be, I don't know, taken over by AI or by AI auto answer or something in a couple of years?
Right. So, when I do Scholar in Residence weekends, one of my talks is about the next generation, and I always start by quoting a quote that talks about exactly what you mentioned, the issue with like our children are, this generation is so weak and they can't focus, etc. Like, and it's a very powerful paragraph, and I asked them, who do you think said this paragraph? And it turns out it's ascribed to Socrates.
Ooh.
Right? So like this has been an issue for like thousands of years, where we have these concerns about the next generation, like you said, whether it's TV and I'm convinced that this too, we'll figure it out. But the question is, what is that figuring out? I am convinced that the figuring out will be, we will begin to realize that recreational technology is addictive. It creates a lot of damage in many ways. And the next generation will do a better job of regulating it, whether that's through official rules, like what we're seeing with the high schools who are saying during school you can't do this, or whether it's just better parenting. Giving your kid a phone is one of the worst parenting decisions you will make in your lifetime. We make mistakes every day as parents. That's just life.
But on the other hand, say in 10 years, like the head of Apple or somebody just recently came out with, did you see the Amazon series Upload at all? Okay, so this, you have to visualize this image. Someone holds up their hand, and in their wrist right here, there is a chip embedded. And when you turn, you just tap your own hand. There's no phone. You tap your chip, and then you swipe the Air, which has your apps and
That's
your
coming.
videos
Elizabeth,
and calls.
that is coming.
And it's not a phone. It's not a smartphone. It's just your body. And like it's real. Like, I mean, like
That's
I think
coming.
it was Tim Cook or somebody who said it. Like, he's like, we're just gonna embed the smartphone technology into your hand.
Or your ear. That's all. Yeah, embedded.
And then just tap it. So like these things, like we're gonna have, these things are things we're going to have to deal with, but sort of the unplugging idea, the unplug as luxury is really maybe a nice thing. Because I like the positivity of that. The idea of unplugging is a beautiful thing that we do it every week. We're able to do it. We have the benefit of communing with our community once a week.
I'm telling you, I actually think my whole Shabbos, I feel Shabbos differently now. Because of technology. Meaning, I don't know if you feel that way also. The fact that I am 20 years ago wasn't as much of an issue. I feel, to me, actually going to laugh, I actually treasure my Erev Shabbos because I know for those 4 or 5 hours, I don't really have to respond to anyone. Okay, whereas the rest of the week I feel like I do, and Shabbos is even more blissful because of it. And to me, I feel the impact of Shabbos even more today. So that's.
So I guess
you solved what you mentioned about pledges. How'd you solve it? You solved pledges. I thought that was cool.
So
people were afraid of
the first time
pledging.
around, the word pledge, you have to think about the fact that these kids, right? Let's say a parent has their oldest child is in 2nd grade. I'm asking them to make a pledge till 8th grade. I'm basically asking them to make a pledge for just about the amount of time they've been a parent, right? So that's a little scary. Like, what's going to be in 3 years? I don't know what's going to be in 3 years, right? It's hard to think that. So we basically softened the words, right? Which had no practical impact, but we used the word social contract. We were actually trying to think of something more interesting. That's the best we could come up with.
It's very like Tocqueville or something.
Right, and we basically said, that we see this as something we will continue to address. So, for example, the first group we started with was our incoming 6th grade, the one, about a year ago. They were the first ones. We're going to set up in the next few months another meeting with them just to talk about, see how it's going, what their thoughts are, and really to get more information on what people have decided in terms of which other like healthy phones they're using. What we found was it was also something where we were looking for information, and there's not that much information yet on it. What are the pluses and minuses of each phone in practice? So we have a bunch of parents who have tried different things, and we're going to try to sort of flesh that out and see which one makes the most sense.
So these are like the flip phone type, Motorola Razr type.
Yeah, and now there are all types of fancy ones that look cool and look with it. And
what I liked about the pledge issues as a former fundraiser, I like actually the next piece of what you said, which is that you look to fundraising campaigns as a model for making it a success. I actually, I just maybe I like that. Just share with us, I just like the way you did that process. Figuring out who the right people in the class are. Just elaborate.
Yeah. So what happened was when we looked at what the other schools were doing, there were a bunch of schools that were ahead of us. because that's what I really think the way to do this. So we need to learn from other schools, they need to learn from us, and everyone's going to get better and better as time goes on. We just saw the numbers, and schools that were getting 25% of the parents on board, 45% of the parents on board. We just didn't think that's enough to create a culture. We thought we needed a lot more than that, right? Our guess was 70%, maybe it's even more, we're not sure. So we really thought about, like, we looked at all the different initiatives that we saw and said, what's missing, right? And really, like, at the end of the day, it's just person ask is like the most powerful, right?
Yeah,
like when you
a peer, the right peer.
Right. What's the line about, 100% of shots that you don't take will not score or something like that?
Well,
that was really what it was.
It was the fundraising ask idea is that most of the people who, when asked why they donated, they say it's because somebody asked them.
Right.
And it's like it's so ridiculous. It seems so simple,
right.
But it's not.
Right.
It just isn't.
And the ask really is, I want you to join me in helping our children. Right. So
how can you say no to that?
It's hard to respond to that, negatively to that, especially when you have the safety net of the fact that everyone else is on board. Right. So I think I mentioned in the article that we saved the hard calls for last because it's a lot easier to say yes when 60% of the people are on board than when you're the first call and wait, you want me to jump into the water first? Like, why would you do that? Okay. So we made all the easy calls first.
Yeah.
So do you have like a 100%? Do you have a class that has 100%
Not yet,
communication?
But we see the changes beginning to happen. Okay. So we're probably on average about 85% right now of parents on board. And what we've also seen is some of those who refused to sign are still involved. They said, well, I want this part or not this part. I'll sign on social media, but I don't want to hold off on getting a smartphone. And my perspective was no. Like, this has to be, culture change has to be simple and obvious. And then once we start allowing other things, like, so do whatever you want, that's great, but like, you're not on the list, and we see some of those families who are, I guess, in the 15%, are still sort of on board. And I think, like, even without signing, are going to sort of just come along with us.
Because they carry it along. 85% is a big number.
Yeah. And they're also sort of like they're the first graduating class, so to speak, of they're really like in 5 years that situation might not be present because it will have been tried and true later on.
For sure. And we'll see how that trend, like, I'll give you an example. So one of the things we're thinking about are what are our next steps. So we're actually exploring educational technology.
That was the question we were about to ask.
Oh, okay.
What next steps,
So there's a lot of things, I think, for next step. One of them, we're beginning to explore educational technology. Everyone assumed at a certain point in time that educational technology was going to revolutionize education and change it dramatically, and it hasn't nearly as much as we thought. Definitely, it's a great tool. My mantra is always like, when it comes to educational technology, we need to say no 9 out of 10 times. Because most of it is glitz and glamour and not real. And unfortunately, a lot of the studies that were done were funded by the technology companies. So as time goes on, it seems like there's more and more research showing that educational technology is not quite as helpful and as successful as we thought it was. So one example is we have a one-to-one Chromebook program in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we basically give a child a Chromebook in 6th grade. It's theirs. When they finish 8th grade, they keep it. And we were considering getting rid of it. And we thought about doing it this year. But then a parent actually said to us, wait, you can't do that. Well, that's why not? He said, like, this is the group that we just committed on behalf of our kids that they're not getting a smartphone, even though their older sibling has one until the beginning of 8th grade. You can't, like, hit this group with the same thing, which I thought was a good point. We agreed. So we're holding off on that. But we have a year to think more about that. But I think, like, educational technology is one. I do think that making sure that the initiatives that are in place now are successful is really critical. Right, so this high school initiative we mentioned before, where no smartphones allowed during the day, is great, and anything the community can support that, to make it successful, I think is great. This initiative that a lot of the elementary schools are working on to try to make sure that our kids get smartphones later, we're still at the very beginning, right? We don't know if it will succeed long term, so I think we need to continue to, like, not drop the ball on this one. I think we need to continue to, like, work on it. Educate about it, make sure that some of the cultural things are continuing. I think these are all really important issues. And I do think that in 2-3 years from now, we'll look back and say, well, maybe we picked the wrong time, right? Maybe by then we'll be willing to be a little bit more bold and say, you know what, even in high school, maybe a kid doesn't need a smartphone. What would look like if kids were just interacting without smartphones like the way they used to, right? So I feel like this is a first step, and there might be a lot of other steps that we can move forward on also. My hope is that the goalposts will change over time.
Yeah, well, I think that makes sense. If once kids are not they're not doing smartphones at all during the school day, that makes perfect sense. I think it's doable. I mean, or at least I think it's within the realm of realistic.
Right. And also maybe adults can take lessons from those. Maybe there could be some sort of shelf or lockbox in a hallway of a shul before you go into the Beit Midrash or a shir.
Many shuls
or
have
davening.
it. Many shuls say that they have those policies. So that I don't know if locally, I think B'nai Yeshua, and I think in Teaneck, I think there are a few shuls.
We could float the idea that a luxury restaurant in our neighborhood might have a phone. Place your phone here for your
zone.
Luxurious dinner experience.
I was in a shul this year that actually had an area outside the shul with chargers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good idea.
Which is one more incentive.
Yeah,
keep your phone here, and you can charge it while you're davening.
Yeah.
So for sure, I think those are definitely really important.
Okay, great.
So I like that phrase. Unplugged is the new luxury.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
Right.
That's a nice takeaway line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rabbi
Thanks for
Alter.
being with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything? Any last word? Any final shout out or any wrap up?
I don't know. I think this is really one of the biggest challenges, and I think that it's worth putting in. To do this well takes a tremendous amount of time and effort, but I just think the return on investment is huge. Right? Like, as an educator, as a head of school, when I think about what I want for my children, I want strong academic rigor. I want strong social emotional health. All the basic things that I would say I want are being affected by this topic. So to me, it's worth the time and the effort. And part of it is just finding those people who are zealous and passionate about it and getting them on board to play a role in this. The one thing I would caution is the ideal person to get involved in this is someone who is zealous and passionate, but balanced at the same time. I think that's a mistake a lot of schools are making, because if you're really zealous about this topic, you will speak to people in ways that they can't relate to, they don't understand.
You turn them off.
Right. So I think that piece, understanding where people are coming from, we have found, when we look for volunteers, that's a really critical piece as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that actually. They have to find the right person.
Luddite concept isn't what we're looking for. We're not looking for people who are unaware about tech.
Yeah.
Right. Like the idea of saying, no, I refuse to bring my check to my smartphone, but would rather walk to the bank to do that because I don't trust this. I don't know. Whatever it is,
Yep.
It seems like that approach, there is use for smart technology,
for sure.
obviously.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
So a balanced approach.
No, for sure. And the last thing I would say also is that, I'm very passionate about this. So any school or people who want to get involved in this, I've shared my email in the article, and even the Zoom that we did, the transcript for it, which has the list of questions that you're going to get asked if you start an initiative like this in your school, it's all there with the appropriate answers. So,
and that link is at the end of your article, which appeared this past week.
Yeah, back to school edition.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi Alter.
Yeah.
Really nice having you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great year.
Fun to be here.
Yeah, Hatzlacha.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. If you would like to participate or be in touch with us in any way, please email us at editor@jewishlink.news and follow us and find our podcast wherever you find podcasts.